Hi folks, you're with us today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about there's a couple, I think two or three even, legal cases that are up to the US Supreme Court to do with affirmative action, race gender quotas in university admission. Now, we're not talking, fourth tier colleges out in the sticks somewhere. We're talking, Harvard and Princeton and the major Ivy League, as they call it in the US, Ivy League colleges that are, of course, world renowned as being the epicenter of excellence in further education. Now, it didn't mean to say that the richest people in America didn't get their kids shoehorned in there with generous donations and so on, but for the main part, the brightest kids did go to those sort of places. Now, there's been a few changes, and I should sort of talk about that, but just to sort of give the uniqueness of this opposition to affirmative action. The primary complainers, if you will, in this are Asian Americans and Jewish Americans. They're the ones that, as a proportion of the total, would get a lot of places at these Ivy League universities. But because affirmative action for Black and Hispanic students is being pushed quite heavily, the race gender quotas are pushed quite heavily, that the big prize for the university is to show off their woke credentials by showing how many Black women or Black lesbian students they take in. And they're not that fussed about academic standards. Now, the argument they say is, we'll look at all the, for example, we'll look at all the Black lesbians that apply to the university and who are encouraged to apply, who otherwise would not have applied without the encouragement. But the Black lesbians, and then we'll take the brightest of those Black lesbians. The brightest Black lesbian may only get, a D or an E or an F grade in the exam. Hey, who cares? The idea is to fill a quota with Black lesbians here. Let's do that first, and we'll just pick the brightest of the Black. But the fact that the brightest Black lesbian is still nowhere near the level of academic achievement that's required to get into Harvard, that's a secondary issue. Now, what this means again is that Jewish students or applicants and Asian students are the ones that are in proportion the most affected by this. So they're the ones that are pushing primarily for the affirmative action. So, affirmative action is not working. It's not white people, straight white Christian males going, hey, we're losing out here, because no one probably listened to them. They're all Nazis anyway, for goodness sakes. Didn't you know that? And if you don't know it, that means you're a Nazi. But when sort of Jewish and Asian Americans come up, then it's a bit hard to say, well, that they're white supremacists or Nazis. So they kind of get a better hearing, and their argument is that they're losing out, not because of their lack of academic capability, but simply because of affirmative action. And therefore, they're arguing it's quite rightly, in my view, by the way, that's illegal. Now, let's go back sort of to the 1950s. And there was an issue there with Jewish students being refused places. Now, let's say, for example, at every 100 places, I don't know, 35, I don't have the exact numbers here. So let's say 35 of them were being taken up by, or would 35 Jewish students were making the grade. So the sort of university, straight white Christian Gentiles, the university administration said, well, hold on a minute, Jews are like 2% of the population of the United States, or not even that. So why should they be getting 35%, 40% of the places? Now, it didn't mean the white students were dumb or weren't making the grade. The white students, the straight white Christian males, were making the grade. It's just the Jewish students were better. We're getting better grades. Now, some of these students, or a lot of them, were coming from like Jewish schools and so on. there was a view that maybe their grades were being ginned up a little bit just through sort of group solidarity. There were various concerns like that going around, but the Jewish students, once they got to university, did pretty good. So we can reasonably assume they were earning their places. So what they did is the university administration sort of restricted the amount of places that Jewish students could get at the university. This was later seen as, well, hold on a minute, we're talking about academic excellence here. We're not talking about whether somebody's, this or that race or this or that color or ethnicity or this or that religious persuasion. I mean, who cares? The idea is academic excellence is what's going to be, revered in this sort of situation. So if 35 Jewish kids make it into the university out of the every 100, then what's wrong with that? So and arguments went back and forth on that. We're now looking at a different sort of landscape where and this touches pretty much everything in the Western world now, and is forced on us by the globalists as a way of sort of crushing the Christian male majority and hegemony in the West is say if all outcomes, not opportunity, if all outcomes are not equal, then there must be something wrong. That wrongness must be systemic racism and fascist Nazis, Hitler, and therefore intervention is required to correct it. There must be racism and this or that. So because Black and Hispanic students weren't making it to the Ivy League universities, not the fourth tier community colleges out in the back, but weren't making it to the Ivy League universities where academic excellence used to be the bar, because they weren't making it equal numbers with white people and so on, or even in proportion to population, then intervention was required to correct it. Now notice how when these sort of things come up, it's only the most prestigious situations that are looked at. Why isn't anyone saying there aren't enough Black lesbians working in cleaning out the sewers? Why don't we say that, well, basketball is dominated by tall Black men, so why do we that must be due to racism or something? So they're very selective in. So it's only the most prestigious, the best paid jobs, the most prestigious occupations, the most prestigious universities. These are the things that are supposed to have equal outcomes. If you want to have the sewer cleaners and low paid shit jobs, and hey, who cares about that? The 78% of courier drivers are men. Why isn't that looked at? And so, well, hey, let's change that. But it isn't. Again, it's only the most prestigious ones. So what you find is certainly by my observation, the people that are really complaining the most and the loudest and putting the most cash on the table and have the most activists and speakers and so on involved with this affirmative action thing, the college admissions, are Jews and Asians here, particularly like Chinese Asians. There's some white people around, but barely a white person in sight. So it's I think pretty much a uniquely Jewish East Asian gig, Chinese gig here for complaining about it. Anyway, the point they're making is valid, in as much as if they're just being discriminated against, and there's another group that's being discriminated on behalf of in order to alter outcomes that are non-organic. The students can't cop it. Now, this is part of a general thing. This idea, if we gift, minority groups, whether it be Black people or Hispanics, if we just gift them PhDs in Ivy League universities, that will change everything in society. Of course it doesn't. Because then, in order to make it work, you then have to gift them a job they haven't. So you have to gift them a pass from junior high school to senior high school. Then you have to gift them a pass from senior high school to an Ivy League or any university. Then you have to gift them the PhD. Then you have to gift them the job. Then you have to, and so it's an endless array, endless train of gift giving in order to produce these equal outcomes. And so when this matter goes to court, which, as I understand, isn't that far away, when this matter goes to the court, this is the Supreme Court in the United States, then they're going to look at it from a strictly legal point of view. And the majority of people on the court, only by one, but the majority of people on the court are constitutional judges. What does the law say? Whereas 3 are definitely in the leftist activist camp, where all black lesbians must be given a PhD, and so we can look at it's going to be at the outside 6-3, probably 5-4 in the end, and there's a decent chance, as a matter of law, that this will this idea of affirmative action will be overturned as being illegal. And now that's one thing there. So the college is assuming they adhere to the law and don't try and make another legal case out of it. What they'll have to do is then stop the admissions process on affirmative action, gifting places of university to low quality students, and then return it to straight academic excellence, which is fine by me. I think that is the right way to go. That doesn't mean that the minority group should be denied a further education or anything like that, and resources could be put into it. I've often advocated that any minority student that falls behind or isn't up with the average or whatever should be offered free after school tuition courtesy of the taxpayer. Bring these students up to the standard. Don't try and drag the standard down to help students that are no good. That's anyway. But if that decision gets up in the court, I don't know that it will, but it looks like it's up with the decent. The smart money seems to suggest it might. Then what impact will that have on affirmative action? Hiring practices, for example, affirmative action on boards of directors and this sort of thing. Now, I see the impact of affirmative action going around in business, and I see it around the place, and it's jaw-dropping. I mean, not the pre-affirmative action that everybody was an expert and a genius in their field. It wasn't that way. It wasn't perfect before, but I've never seen so many unqualified people in the roles that you see today. It's staggering that this sort of lack of qualification is accepted as the way things should be and must be to create some equity-based society. It's insane, and we're all getting poorer very, very quickly, or the 99.7% are getting poorer very, very quickly as a result of this. So I think this would be a good thing, and that the possibility is that if that decision does occur, that the on effects, the flow on effects or knock on effects could be profound, and it'll be interesting to watch and see what happens. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.